The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Welcome in, everybody. Kip Kiefer with you. Another edition of Need to Know on TKR, and we are always delighted to join you to start a brand new week. We put these recordings in place on Monday. You can listen to it throughout the week on TKR and any platform where the TKR programming schedule is uploaded, all the Apple platforms specifically. And you know, week to week, it's difficult. I had a couple of things that I was mulling over to talk about, but events of the last just couple of days on the weekend have commanded my attention, and there's a couple of things that I really want to just logically and without a lot of passion and fire, which I tend to get wound up sometimes on subjects, and I won't say I rant and rave, but I do get rather animated, and I'm going to try to stay measured today because I think there's a lot of important information that, you know, wherever you're getting your news, or if you even have followed the news, a lot of people are smart enough, unlike me, to probably step away from things on the weekend and focus on their lives and their families, and that makes a lot of sense. But we're really witnessing sort of the melodrama of what the current state of our country is in this time of transition. On November 5th of last year, as all of you well know, Donald J. Trump was elected to a second term as president, the first, or actually only the second individual to ever receive a second term in a non-consecutive situation. There have been countless presidents that have run for re-election and have won, but only Grover Cleveland back in the 1880s served a term, was beaten for re-election, and then resumed and regained the presidency 4 years later. And that's exactly what happened, of course, in this election. Trump, the only second president ever to serve two terms non-consecutively. What that mandate from the American people on November 5th stated was the policies of this previous administration, and I'm not going to refer to it by the quote president unquote's name, because folks that say these are Joe Biden's policies that Trump is trying to unwind is absolutely nonsensical. And right now, you've got all of these books coming out from people that were in the inner circle. Most recently, Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, the mouthpiece for the administration for all 4 years, actually about 3.5, Jen Psaki, who is now on MSNBC. What a surprise place for her to land. Left-wing commentator, show host, whatever she does. But anyway, Jean-Pierre took over and was, by all accounts, and people, veteran media people, probably the worst press secretary in the history of the world. But she fit the profile for that administration. She was an African American. She was a lesbian. She was checked all the boxes in the DEI column. Even if she wasn't terribly qualified or knowledgeable, she was bulletproof because of her particular makeup. And again, I don't care. I don't care if she's from another planet, if she was an effective press secretary. But all she did basically was deflect, and the Jen Psaki methodology, of course, was. I'll circle back and check on that for you. Jean-Pierre would stop questions in mid-sentence and say, I'm not going to address that today. That's ridiculous. We're not going to talk about that. She carried around this giant binder. She was furiously referring to her notes all the time. She never gave answers. She only referred questions to other sources and was very short fused in terms of her tolerance for any questions relative, especially to the fitness of our previous commander in chief, really our, really failing, mentally, cognitively declining president commander in chief. She would reject those things with things like, I work with the president every day. He runs circles around everybody here. He is so sharp and so competent and so on top of everything. And it's just was such an absolute lie and so ridiculous, because if you saw any kind of clips of Joe Biden stumbling around, falling down, not being able to complete a cogent thought, not being able to finish a lot of sentences, the fact of that was the reality, and she was talking about just how sharp this guy was. And remember what they resorted to for a short time? That all of the video you were seeing, I was seeing, of Biden not being able to finish a thought or stumbling or falling, all those became, in the words of Jean-Pierre, cheap fakes. These were images that were doctored by these conservative media outlets, the finger pointing predominantly at Fox News, that the things that were distorted and played out of context and made to look like that Joe Biden was struggling. And then we had, almost a year ago, coming up at the end of this month, the debate. The first debate, which happened in June, and at the time, I told you this is very unusual. Before either candidate was officially dubbed their nominee, to have a debate before all of that was done. Debates for presidents, from the presidential candidates, have historically taken place at or just after Labor Day weekend. And this one was 2 months before that. And it's come to light now in a lot of these tell-all books that my theory at that time, and theory of other people that really paid attention to this, was right. This was a debate really to sacrifice Joe Biden, because their internal polling on the Democrat side said the American people wasn't buying the excuse that this video they were seeing with their own eyes and the sound bites they were hearing with their own ears were fakes. They were not buying the fact that Joe Biden was cognizant and capable for office. So their internal polling said he can't win. He's got no chance. I continue to be convinced, and the evidence is mounting now with more and more confirmation, that the reason that debate was scheduled so early was because they knew Joe Biden was going to fall flat on his face. They knew Trump was going to make mincemeat out of him, and that was going to give them the excuse to force him out of the race and put somebody else in. And the way it played out, they were stuck with Kamala Harris. There were a lot of more higher up leaders. I didn't need to use more there. Higher up leaders that wanted to have kind of a mini, basically primary and try and pick a candidate at the convention, pretty much at the 11th hour. But the Kamala Harris card, which was another DEI hire, she was not qualified to be vice president. She didn't work hard as vice president. She really actually did nothing. And all of a sudden now she's the candidate for president, and there's unity in the Democrat Party, and she's the great savior, although she's never accomplished really anything in her career. And she was exposed by them keeping her out of sight and out of mind and not letting her do interviews for the first 2 months of her candidacy. And she only was a candidate for about 3 months. And when she did start doing interviews, it was obvious right away this person did not have the chops and the experience and any kind of policy, positions that the American people wanted. It was going to be more of the same: open borders, lawlessness, all of these liberal DAs that were just have a turnstile instead of jail cells for violent criminals. They're back on the street the next day. And the American people said enough, and that mandate was delivered. Of course, the great counter to that was you're electing a convicted felon, and we've talked at length on this show about how ridiculous the charges in New York were. They were misdemeanors that were tacked on with federal crimes of election malpractice and these basically bookkeeping errors, which weren't even proven anyway, became blown up into felonies. And of course, a Manhattan jury came back with guilty verdicts, just like that they hoped they would. The whole thing was the absolute kangaroo court. The judge said in the instructions, if you recall, if you think he's guilty of any of these felonies, you can vote guilty on all counts. So it completely defied everything in American jurisprudence. Every legal expert on every network, even the liberal ones, said, they're getting away with murder here. This is a done deal. So all of this, you're electing a felon, and he's going to be a dictator from day one. He said it himself. He did not say from day one. He said a completely different phrase. On the first day, I'm going to be a dictator because I'm immediately closing the border and I'm immediately opening us back up for business in the energy sector. That was a flippant way of saying I'm going to do these two big things the first day. So in essence, I'll be a dictator on day one. That's what they said. He said, I'm going to be a dictator on my first day, because he was going to do those two brash things. And of course, he signed about 50 executive orders on his first day. On my first day is different from day one, because from day one means you're going to be a dictator throughout your entire administration. On the first day, it was just a flippant, trying to be funny way of saying, yeah, I'm going to be a dictator. I'm closing the borders and I'm opening the energy business for the United States. So anyway, with all of that preface, what we're seeing is all of this coming to a head because the Democrat Party, who took an ass whooping in all three branches of government, and two of the three branches, of course, in the legislative and the executive, as the House and the Senate and the White House went to Republicans. The only way they've been able to counter is to create this hysteria, create this fear. Donald Trump is never going to leave. He's going to be a dictator. He's going to be the end of democracy. This is a constitutional crisis. It's the projection of their own situation under this previous administration, which was run by God knows who behind the scenes. Was it Jill Biden? Was it Ron Klain, the chief of staff? Was it the variety of Obama cabinet members that were serving in key positions like National Security Advisor and Secretary of State? All of these people in conjunction with the great President Barack Obama, who had admitted that he wanted to be behind the scenes and be pulling the strings and operating the levers without being in the spotlight. He got his wish because basically that term that we've just endured was the third term of Barack Obama, where he was able to take advantage of so much of the infrastructure that he put in place and really kind of manipulate events from behind the scenes. The American people thoroughly rejected all of those policies and swept Donald Trump into office despite all of the ridiculous rhetoric. And now they have nothing else. They have no policies. They know everything that they tried to perpetrate on the American people have blown up in their face. Americans from coast to coast are not down with any of that. The Republicans cut into the margins from the previous elections in strongholds like New York, Illinois, and California considerably. The dam was breaking for the Democrats, so they have just held on with all their might to the only thing they think they have going for them is to continue to demonize this president and this administration. So it all comes to a head this weekend when the ICE officials targeted and made the audacious move of federal court judges, I should say, issued warrants for the arrest of 114 convicted or charged felons who have never been tried, who are all in the country illegally. This is what the emphasis has been on in the last couple of months by ICE, by the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the DEA, all of these criminals in this country, a lot of cartel people from Mexico, a whole host of these foreign gangs from Venezuela and South America, MS-13 and Agua de Trende de Agua, these groups in the country that were committing violent crimes and trafficking human beings and running these just hideous human smuggling operations and guns and drugs and fentanyl. These were some of the worst perpetrators in the country. ICE last week on Friday had warrants for 114 people who, through their investigatory process, they knew they were in Los Angeles, and they commenced the raids to go and round those people up. And what happened was, by Friday night, when the word got around, there were all kinds of protesters in the street, and they were raising hell, and they were doing all kinds of things. And I'm going to tell you who these protesters were in just a moment here. But it got out of hand to the point where some officers, these are federal law enforcement officers. They got in trouble in a neighborhood where they were surrounded by hundreds of people. They called out to the Los Angeles Police Department for assistance. The LAPD did not respond for 38 minutes. The lame excuse given last night in a press conference was, well, it was just a dangerous situation. There was just massive traffic. There were thousands of people in the streets. That was as fast as we could get there. They slow walked everything that first night because at its core, this is not a situation where there's this great opposition to getting these criminal aliens out of the country. The opposition is political. The opposition is, look, we told you Trump's going to be a Nazi. Trump's going to have stormtroopers. He's going to have basically his version of the SS, the Gestapo. They're using all of these Hitler era terms for what's going on. These were legal proceedings to get the worst invaders in this country out of here. They had signed warrants from federal courts targeting individuals. This was projected to the people by these Democrat leaders who are clinging to anything they can possibly hold on to try and discredit Trump. These were called. They're having roundups. They're just seizing people and they're going to deport them. Just like the poor Maryland dad who got deported to his home country of El Salvador. Well, he's back, by the way. I'm not going to go a long dissertation on that, but they did it, the thorough investigation that should have been done in the previous administration, and found that he's guilty of all kinds of heinous crimes, including being accessory to a murder, but particularly transporting human beings all around the country more than 100 times, different people, women, children, basically guys that were going to be put into slave labor situations. This guy's one of the worst of the worst. So he's back, if that makes everybody happy. The idiot senator from Maryland who flew down there to grandstand and call attention to the wrong of this guy being deported, although he was ordered deported in 2019 by two different courts. This this is a bad guy, an MS-13 member, and now he's back to be actually tried on charges because all the attention that was put on him, he'd been better off just to be allowed to go to El Salvador. Now he's going to serve about 10, 12 years hard time here, and then the day he gets out, they're going to ship him out anyway. I digress here. That moron of Van Hollen, the senator from Maryland, said, well, this is justice. This is victory for our campaign to get Mr. Garcia brought back home. Mr. Garcia is not home by being back in federal prison in America. Mr. Garcia is from El Salvador. He entered this country twice illegally. He was kicked out. One time he came back. He is not home. This is not his home. If you're not a legal resident of this country, you're not home. If you settle into a neighborhood and you do not have legal status to be here, or if you had a visa and your time has run out, you're not home. I don't care. All of this, we're protecting our citizens and our residents of our communities. They're not citizens. They may be residents because they're laying their head down there, but they are not home. They are not Americans. They are not legally here. There is a legal process. If you want to come from another country to get into this country, it's called immigration. And immigration is by definition a legal process. So you've got all of this turmoil in the streets now. You've got these protesters who resorted to throwing rocks and bottles and whatever they could get their hands on, firecrackers, these flash grenade things. It got completely out of hand, and there was virtually no response from law enforcement that first night. By Saturday, when there was more protests and things planned, Donald Trump issued the warning that this better get fixed. We better have a lot of presence on the streets tonight and keep this under control, or I'm going to take my legal authority to declare a dangerous situation, and I'm going to take control of the National Guard, which usually is under the control of the governor of the state. But in this case, Trump is perfectly within his constitutional and legal rights in a situation where the governor's not taking action. And of course, a mistake was made in the riots in Minneapolis in 2020. The National Guard in Minnesota should have been deployed right away. The great Governor Walz slow walked that as well, and you had half the city on fire. Trump vowed that's not going to happen. But in that 24 hours, when Trump said, I'm going to send the National Guard in, then every political leader in California started screaming from the rooftops, this is just going to exacerbate the situation. This is Trump creating chaos and mayhem and destruction. These are peaceful protests. Did you see the footage from the peaceful protest? People cracking up these giant cinder blocks and throwing these chunks of concrete at ICE officers, of lighting all kinds of cars. Whole blocks were in these raging infernos because they're lighting cars on fire. Official vehicles where people had been deployed, police and fire officials. These are public things that your tax dollars pay for, and they're lighting them on fire. They're burning everything that they can possibly burn. On Sunday, it got worse. That continued as the National Guard started to arrive, but on the 101 freeway, which is the main outlet in and out of Los Angeles, the protesters, thousands of them, occupied the freeway, which completely inhibited. There's no traffic, no ability for people to come or go. People live lives. People may have medical emergency. Women might be pregnant, about to give birth. They're not going to get there on the 101 freeway, the main artery, because these protesters are out there. And let me tell you about the protesters. You've got, of course, in California, the core group of left-wing crazies that can be motivated at a drop of a hat, because they don't really follow what's going on. The only information they get are from each other and from the most liberal news sources possible. And the alarm is sounded that Trump is rounding up citizens. They're taking people that are your friends and neighbors, and they're just going to make them disappear. So all of a sudden, you get that left wing faction, which is, a considerable amount of people, but not really people that have any kind of balanced views. They are just left wing by nature, and they're ready to get out on the street at a moment's notice because in California, there's a long tradition of doing that. That's the one group, which are pretty much legitimate, peaceful protesters, although they're really, kind of way out of bounds with their beliefs. So that's the start of it. The second group are people that again are out there for political purposes because they think they can exploit a situation, and that's another group that is probably not going to be prone to violence, but you've got these two kind of people that are out there for what is kind of ideological ways, and the other ones that are for kind of politically motivated. Then you've got, very disturbingly, because of the sanctuary city that LA is, you've got all of these invaders, illegals themselves, worried that ultimately they're going to be the target and acting like they're the target now. They're carrying around Mexican flags in masse. You have to wonder how many Mexican nationals are in Los Angeles. These are people that are out there to really create turmoil and problems. They start with the rock throwing. They start with dropping cinder blocks off the expressway overpasses onto emergency vehicles, endangering the lives of law enforcement officers. There are thousands of these people in the street, and they're carrying around foreign flags, and they're burning American flags and burning American property and official vehicles, destroying these probably multi-million-dollar giant robots that patrol the streets to keep human beings safe, that surveil what's going on and really in the control centers send back data so police and officials can make decisions. I think I heard that 3 to 5 of those were completely trashed. So that's that group. And then you've got really the distressing final group of protesters, and this is what every American should be outraged by. There are these professional thugs that are dispatched to every single situation. We see them in all of these deals where groups that are protesting peacefully for other causes, just like what happened in Colorado last week, where the guy tried to kill a bunch of peaceful protesters just marching for support of people still being held hostage in Gaza. These people will dispatch at seemingly a moment's notice to any kind of big gathering, and they are there to create complete unrest. They've been kind of classified as Antifa, but Antifa is certainly still very active. But there are numbers of these professional thugs. And even though he was trying to be politically correct last night, the Los Angeles Police Department head man was making reference to these professionals, these professional troublemakers, is how he put it. And they are dispatched through all of these organizations. And here's the really insidious part. They're being paid to be there. This is their job, and they can be dispatched at a moment's notice. Wait till you see next week. In Washington, there's going to be a military parade to celebrate the 250th year of the United States Army. And there's already been an announcement that thousands of protesters, and a lot of that group is going to be these people that are there to destroy things, to cause trouble. We saw it all during the George Floyd protests in the 2020 years. These are referred to by Democrats as peace peaceful protests. They're not peaceful when cars are burning, when blocks are on fire, when people's lives are being threatened, when law enforcement officers are being pelted by bottles and rocks and debris and Molotov cocktails and fireworks. That is not peaceful. That is violent and potentially lethal. Uh, Numerous officers injured. It's absolutely unacceptable. And once again, this wasn't a sweep. This wasn't people making people law enforcement making people disappear. This was legal proceedings to get the worst of the worst of these illegal invaders out of our country. They have no business being here. These are convicted murderers, armed robbers, child pornographers, child abusers, rapists, the worst of the worst. These were 114 specific warrants for people they knew were hiding out in the Los Angeles area. They shouldn't be on the streets. They shouldn't be walking around. It was not one particular group. It was people from a variety of countries, including a Vietnamese illegal in the country who was convicted of 2 murders, and somehow, some way, he's been allowed to be out and be walking around. Uh, that's what they're protesting. That's what they're calling peaceful protests. These are the worst of the worst that need to be out of this country, and all of our safety. Look at the families that have lost loved ones to these brutal murders, to DUI accidents where their loved ones were killed, where somebody not even allowed in our country legally is operating a motor vehicle irresponsibly. There are so many documented cases. These people have to go. And all the human trafficking that's going on, all the women and children that are being exploited. There's still hundreds of thousands of children missing. God only knows what circumstances those poor innocent souls found themselves in, with from absolutely no fault of their own. So the bottom line is, don't buy the hype that these are peaceful protests. Watch the video. Let your own eyes and your own ears make the judgment. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just telling you, get all the information you need to be thoroughly informed, because this is just a sad situation where a group of ideologues and politically motivated left-wing Democrats are trying to take advantage of a situation that they really don't give a damn about, even to the point of hiring thugs. And I'm going to wrap this up, I'm going to put it to the Trump administration, particularly the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, the new Attorney General, Kash Patel with the FBI, Dan Bongino, his assistant, all of these prominent people. Here's the deal. These paid thugs that come to all of these things and cause all of this trouble and destruction. And they are at everything. Even a recent, I can't remember which team it was. I think it might have been like the Philadelphia Eagles last year when they won the Super Bowl. There were a lot of these people that came to the big street celebrations there and started destroying property and trying to create mayhem. Any gathering of people is an opportunity to try and just create this, I don't know, air of unrest in this country. And then they have the audacity to turn around and blame it on the administration and blame it on Donald Trump. See, we told you everything's unstable. This is a dictatorship, and people are in the streets trying to make their voices be heard, and they're being suppressed. They are sending in these troublemakers, these rabble rousers that are being paid to be there, and you can do an investigation. And I challenge Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice to do that, because these organizations that hire these people, and you can start right with our buddy George Soros, who's the underwriter of a lot of this, but there are tons of other organizations that are responsible. And the insidious thing is, a lot of money's coming from overseas to fund these people, these old school European elites that gather every year for their big economic conference in Davos. The Chinese government is responsible for for a lot of this funding of these professional troublemakers, as the sheriff said last night in Los Angeles. And also, this is the worst. You and I are funding a lot of this because in our own government, some of these agencies and departments that have been exposed as frauds in the Doge situation of government efficiency, a lot of our taxpayer money that's being appropriated by Congress gets channeled out to these unknown organizations way on the left. And they are, so our own taxpayer dollars could be in this situation. And finally, last thought. You had Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader in the House of Representatives, the highest ranked Democrat congressman, saying that it's absolutely abominable that ICE agents are acting just like the Gestapo and the SS, wearing masks to conceal their identities. These guys have to wear masks, folks. They're not doing it because they're embarrassed to be doing their sworn duty. They're not doing it to conceal their identity from a safety standpoint for themselves. They're doing it because in this day and age of technology, you have to keep your identity hopefully secret, because it's already been a thing where they get images of these ICE agents, and they do handbills and hang pictures of them on telephone poles. They put information online. Regular officers have people at their houses protesting. Their families are threatened. Their children who go to school can't live their lives. If you're a federal officer and you are trying to enforce the law and uphold your sworn duty, you have to keep your identity anonymous, because you will be targeted and you will be doxxed, and you will have your safety and your family's safety, particularly. The agents are equipped and trained to handle themselves, but their families are not in that mode. And that's the world we live in right now, because the fanaticism to try and retake this country and try to discredit the current administration, who is doing what they were sent there to do. This is democracy in action. This is not a threat to democracy. This is democracy. This country voted overwhelmingly for this administration to get this country back on track, get things under control, and put Americans first. The reason that there's so much angst about all of this immigration crackdown of getting these illegal migrants out of this country is because California is the gravy train for the whole program of showing that, yeah, you can get all these illegals in, and you can give them driver's licenses, and you can supplement their lifestyles and pay for all of their housing and their food and their education, even provide some jobs, whatnot. And also, by giving them a driver's license, in California, that automatically allows you to be registered to vote. These people are not voters. They're not in this country legally. They're not citizens. They're not allowed to vote. And a constitutional crisis, there's your constitutional crisis, because the Constitution's very specific. If you're not a citizen, you're not a voter. So all of this is just projection, them turning the mirror around, that they look at themselves and trying to project it on an administration that is doing what they were sent to Washington to do. And that's what you needed to know today. Don't buy the banana that they try and sell you, that it's the administration that's causing turmoil and causing mayhem and causing their favorite word, chaos. The chaos is being generated purposely just to try and discredit the administration that is trying everything to get it back on track and to put you, me, and all Americans first and foremost. That's Need to Know for this week. I'll be back next week. Tony wants me to assume the role of chief executive. So next week, I'm going to give you, right today, if I was summoned and my inauguration was next Monday, I'm going to tell you what I would do on my first day in terms of executive orders next week, right here on Need to Know. So don't miss that. And it may involve, one of those may involve the outlawing of soccer in this country. There's a little teaser for you. I'm Kip Kiefer. We'll talk to you next week here on Need to Know.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.